and we're going to begin with the cup itself and using this grass green colored yarn. So the first thing that we need to do is form a magic ring. So let's review how to get one of those tied. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn, and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand, and I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around, and then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit, and then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb, and then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand, and we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. And we're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position, so kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those 2 identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook, so I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. All right, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to go ahead and begin on round 1. And if you look at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the instructions for the pattern are going to track with us. So feel free to reference the left-hand corner or, of course, the pattern itself. So for round 1, we need to put 6 SC in MR. And what that means is we're going to be placing 6 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. And then that number in parentheses at the very end of our instructions are telling us how many stitches we'll have when we get to the end of round 1. In this case, we'll have 6. So let's go ahead and get started by making our first single crochet stitch. We're going to take our hook and we're going to pass it both through the ring of the magic ring and then also around this tail that we use to tie our magic ring. So I'll take my hook and go underneath both sides, that ring and the tail. Then I'm going to yarn under, meaning I'm going to put the yarn underneath my crochet hook. And then use the hook to grab it and pull it up into a nice tall loop through the ring. Then to finish off my single crochet stitch, I'm going to yarn over, so put the yarn over my hook, and then use that hook to grab it and pull it straight through those 2 loops left on my crochet hook. That forms our first single crochet stitch. I also like to take my thumb and index finger on my hook hand here and scoot them over towards my hand to tighten that stitch. And then we're also going to want to mark this stitch too. When we crochet amigurumi, we always mark that first stitch because it tells us when we've reached the end of our row and it's time to start a new row. So we're going to take our stitch marker and just slip it through both sides of that stitch. And then lock. So there's our first single crochet. We're going to continue adding them in that same way. So we'll take our hook, go through our ring and under that tail, yarn under, and draw through that loop. Then yarn over and draw through both loops left on our hook. There's my second single crochet stitch. Three, 4, 5 and last one. 6. And if you lose track, you can turn your work on the side, and by counting these little V shapes here, you can double check that you have 6 stitches, and then we don't count this loop on our hook. That's sort of like a stitch in progress. Alright, so once we have all 6 of our single crochet stitches added to our magic ring, we're going to do the magic part and pull that tail to close that first round off and set us up for round 2. So round 2, we have to make 6 INC stitches, and what INC stands for is an increase. So the way we'll do an increase is we're going to make a single crochet stitch, 2 of them, in one of the stitches from the last round. So the first one that we need to make is this stitch here that we've marked. That's where we're going to be placing our first single crochet stitch. So we're going to take that marker out and kind of keep our eyes on where it was. And to make our first single crochet stitch of our increase, we'll take our hook and we're going to slip it underneath that stitch that was just marked, under both sides of that stitch. Then from here, it's just like how we made our single crochet stitches in our magic ring. We're yarn under and draw our yarn through the fabric of our work, that stitch that we just went through, and up into a nice tall loop. Then yarn over and draw through both loops. And then that stitch that we just finished, we need to mark. We're always going to mark the first stitch. And to finish our increase, we need to add a second single crochet stitch to that same place. So that same stitch that we just went through, we're going to go through again and make a second single crochet stitch. And there's our first increase. And we're going to continue increasing, adding 2 single crochet stitches to each stitch, which will give us 12 stitches total at the end of round 2. Alright, I just finished the last increase in round 2. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to pull my magic ring tail one last time, and then I'm going to flip my work over and give it a trim. So I'm not going to cut it completely off, I'm just going to cut it short and discard the tail that I cut. And that keeps it out of my way as I continue working around. Alright, we're ready for round 3. In round 3 we have some parentheses. And what those are telling us is that the instructions inside need to be repeated in the order they appear, the amount of times that we see outside of the parentheses. So let's start with what we know. We'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of our round, and then mark. And then in the next stitch we're going to increase, and that's 1 repetition of the instructions in the parentheses. We need to do this 6 times, so we'll need to repeat that 5 more times until we get to the end of our round. And that should also give us 18 stitches total. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, increase in the stitch after, and we're going to keep repeating that pattern. 1 single crochet, 1 increase, Alright, that wraps up round 3 for me. Round 4, we've got another set of parentheses to repeat, but this time we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. So 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, 1 single crochet stitch in the second stitch of the round, and then we'll increase. So in the third stitch, an increase. Then we're going to repeat that sequence, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase. Again, 6 times total until we are all the way around round 4. Alright, that's round 4 done for me. Round 5, we're going to be working in the BLO. So I'm going to take my hook out. You don't need to, you can leave yours right where it is. I'm going to take it out so I can show you the back loops that we're going to be working in. So with my yellow yarn needle here, I've got both sides of my stitch. And that's how we've been working normally. We've been going through, grabbing both sides of our stitch. But the stitch actually has a front loop and a back loop. The front loop is this one here, the one closest to the front of my work, the side that's been facing me this whole time, and that doesn't have my magic ring tail on it. And then the back loop is this one here, which is the one that's closest to the back side of our work, the side with the magic ring tail on it. So when we work round 5, we're going to be placing our stitches in these back loops here that I'm sort of pulling up with my yarn needle. So to do that, I'll put my hook back in. We'll take our stitch marker out. And then rather than going underneath both sides of the stitch, we're just going to snag that back loop. So sort of taking our hook in between those two sides and grabbing just that back loop on the first stitch. And then from here, it's just like a regular single crochet. We'll yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop, and then yarn over and draw through both. And of course, mark that stitch as well. And if you look, you can see when we crochet only in the back loop, it's going to leave the front loop behind. So this right here is the front loop that we didn't work through. It's going to continue leaving those loops behind as we work. So for round 5, we're going to just continue adding single crochet stitches to each of the back loops from the stitches of round 4. Alright, that's round 5 done. We're ready for round 6, and we are back in both sides of our stitch, so no longer in the back loop only. And we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of our round. So there are those first 3 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. And then just like we did in rounds 3 and 4, we're going to repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 until we're all the way around. Alright, that's round 6 done for me. Round 7, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of our round. So there are those first 2 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. And then from here we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat, this time only 5 times. So we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of our round and then increase. And that repetition pattern is going to take us all the way to the last 2 stitches. And in those last 2 stitches we're just going to put 1 single crochet in each. So that's 4 single crochet stitches. Followed by an increase, 5 times total. Alright, I reached the last 2 stitches of the round. I'm just going to put 1 single crochet in each. That wraps up round 7, and I'm ready for round 8. We've got another parentheses pattern to repeat. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. And then increase in the next stitch. Then we're going to repeat this sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that's the end of round 8. So we have the option to add some cardboard or plastic to the bottom of our teacup. I'm going to go ahead and do that because it helps reinforce this flat shape. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to pull the loop on it fairly long and then take my hook out. And then to get this cardboard or plastic to be the right size, I'm going to take my teacup and I'm going to flip it so that the bottom is on a flat surface. And then I'm going to grab some cardboard and then trace the bottom of the teacup onto that cardboard. Alright, so here's a little scrap of cardboard. I'm just going to pop the teacup here on the bottom and then take a pencil and just trace around the teacup. It doesn't have to be perfect, kind of just a general shape. Then I'm going to cut this. Alright, so once you've got your circle cut, we're going to place it on the inside of our teacup. Double check that it's the right size. Mine's actually a little big, so I'm going to trim it just a little bit more. Alright, let's double check the size again. And that is a much better size for my teacup. So I'm ready to go ahead and glue this in place. A quick note though, if this is going to be a gift for a small child or a pet, you may not want to insert the cardboard or plastic inside as it will make it hard and then also harder to wash. Alright, so I'm going to take a little blob of glue and add it to the bottom of my circle and then just glue in place by setting and pressing to the bottom of the teacup on the inside. Alright, so we're ready to move on in our pattern, and the very first thing we've got coming up is a color change. So we're going to be done with the green. I'm going to go ahead and take my green yarn and cut it. Don't need a very long tail. And we're switching to white yarn. And the way we're going to do our color change is we'll take our crochet hook and we're going to grab these 2 loops here that are on this loop we pulled long. Starting with this one here, sort of where the loop comes out. So just slip your hook through that loop there. And then we're going to slip it through this loop here, closest to our fabric. And now that we've done that, we're going to grab our new color, and I'll leave a little bit of a tail, so don't grab at the very end. Leave a little tail, and then we're going to wrap the yarn around our crochet hook and pull it through those 2 loops we pulled our hook through. Then we can take the green tail that we cut and pull it, and that will undo that last green loop and sets us up to work in our new color, which is white. So we can start tensioning our white yarn, and then we're going to pull both the short white tail and the green tail. We also want to work these tails in for the next couple of stitches of round 9. So let's go ahead and take our stitch marker out and start right in. So to work our tails in, it's going to be a lot like how we worked our magic ring tail in. We're going to go through the next stitch of our round, and then we're going to take both of those tails and lay them over our crochet hook. Then we're going to yarn under just like we would on a regular crochet stitch and draw it through the fabric of our stitch. It's also going to catch those tails, and then finish our single crochet stitch. And of course we're going to want to mark this. And we'll work those tails in for the next few stitches. So we'll go through our next stitch. Let's work it in one more stitch. So now that those tails have been worked in, we can trim them short so they stay out of our way. Don't trim them all the way off, just short, and discard any extra. And then the rest of the tail will just hang out inside of the teacup. Alright, so we're going to continue on. Rounds 9 and 10 are just one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 9 done. Round 10 is again just one single crochet stitch in each stitch of the round. Alright, so that's the last stitch in round 10, and I'm ready to switch colors to that coral pink color. So just like I did when I switched from green to white, I'm going to pull this loop pretty long, take my hook out, and then trim my white yarn. Grab that coral colored yarn, and then take my hook and slip it through that loop closest to the loop we pulled long, and then the loop at the very bottom that comes up through our fabric. Then we'll grab our new color, reserve ourselves a little tiny tail, wrap our new color around our hook, and pull it through those two loops, and then pull that white that we cut to change colors. Then we can start tensioning that coral colored yarn, and we'll pull both of those tails to tighten down our loops. And then rounds 11 and 12, just like rounds 10 and 11, just like rounds 9 and 10, we're going to be making one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. In the first couple of stitches of round 11, we want to work those color change tails in. So just like with the white and green, we'll work our first single crochet stitch and then lay those tails over the top of our hook. We'll work those tails in for a few more stitches. And now that we worked them in for a little bit, we can trim them short. And these tails will just hang out inside of the teacup as we keep working around. Alright, so this is round 11, just one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, I'm ready for round 12. Again, just one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so we're ready for round 13, where we're going to be incorporating some black yarn for the seeds of the watermelon. So we'll start by placing one single crochet stitch in this coral color in the first 5 stitches of our round. And then we need to change to black to make our next stitch. So just like we did with all the color changes so far, we'll pull our pink loop up long, but we're not going to cut the tail because we're going to be working in both pink and black for these seeds. So I'll insert my hook through those last 2 stitches, grab my black yarn, leave a little bit of a tail, wrap it around my hook, and pull it through. Then pull my pink yarn, and then we're going to want to work the pink yarn and this black tail in with our next stitch. So we'll go through, lay those 2 tails over our hook, and make our single crochet stitch. Then we're going to switch back to coral. So what we'll need to do, again, pull that last loop up long, go through those 2 loops, and then grab the pink tail, pull it through those 2 loops, and then pull the black to switch colors. And then we're going to carry the black behind our work now for the next 5 stitches. So I'm just laying the black over my hook. At this point, we can go ahead and cut the black's tail. So those are my 3 stitches. We don't have to carry either of the black anymore now. We'll make 2 more. There's my 5th pink stitch. Then we're going to switch to black. So pull that last loop up long, go through, grab the black that's still attached, and draw it through those loops, and then pull the pink. And we'll make our next stitch in black. I also find if you're doing really quick color changes and the yarn's already attached, an easier way to change colors is to yarn under and draw through, starting your next stitch, and then finish the stitch off with the old color. So if you're doing really quick color changes and everything's already attached, I find that works a lot faster. So we'll make 5 more single crochet stitches in pink, and that 5th one we're going to want to finish with black. So I'll make half of it and then draw my black through, make half of my next black stitch and draw through with the pink. We'll just keep trading back and forth what color we're using. Here's that 5th stitch, so I'm going to finish it off with black. Finish off the seed with black, with pink. And you can see as I do my color changes, I'm just laying the black behind my work in a long sort of, it's called a float, so it's just kind of hanging out behind the stitches here. So careful not to pull too tightly whenever you switch colors. You want to have a nice loose float in the back. Alright, so here's my last stitch, and it's going to be in black. And remember, we're going to finish it off with pink, so pull through those 2 loops with pink. And then for round 14, we're going to be only working in pink. So we're going to leave the black attached, and we're going to come back for it for round 15. But for round 14, we're just working 1 single crochet stitch in the next 42 stitches, so all the way around. Alright, that was the last stitch of round 14 for me. Round 15 we're back working with both coral and black, and we'll start by putting 2 stitches in coral. So here's my second stitch. I'm going to finish this one off with black because we're making our next stitch one in black. Then I'll finish this one off in coral because we're switching back to coral. Then in the next 5 stitches I'll make a coral colored single crochet stitch. Finishing off the 5th coral stitch in black. And then making the next stitch in black, finishing off in coral, repeating that pattern all the way around. Here's the last black seed stitch I'm going to make. So I'll finish it off with coral, and then I'm ready to fasten this black off. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a tail. And then we're going to weave this tail in as we work the next few stitches, just like we've done with all of our color changes so far. So just lay it over your hook as you work the next 3 and last 3 single crochet stitches here in round 15. Alright, that is round 15 done. For round 16, we're going to be working in just coral and just putting 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. We can leave that black tail that we cut just inside of the cup here. Alright, so for round 17, we're going to be working in just the back loops only, just like we did here at the bottom of the cup. So just one single crochet stitch in each of the back loops. Alright, that's round 17 done. So for rounds 18 through 24, we're just going to be putting one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So don't forget to move your stitch marker at the beginning of each round, and I will see you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 24. Alright, so I have just wrapped up the last single crochet stitch in round 24, and I'm ready to place my safety eyes. So to do that, first I'm going to take my crochet hook and I'm going to pull the loop on it very long and remove my hook. And then all the color changes that we've had and the back loops only have left a little bit of a jog, which you can see here on the back of my work. So I'm going to flip my work over so the face is on the side that doesn't have the jog. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my safety eyes. So here they are right here. A quick note though, if this is going to be for, again, a small child or a pet, you may want to embroider these on instead. But if not, we're going to go ahead and take our first eye, and they're going to be placed in the space between rounds 10 and 11, which is really easy to see because it's in between where the white and the pink are. I'm going to take my first eye and just push it through. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab the second eye, and they're placed about 4 stitches apart, but I'm using slightly larger eyes than the pattern calls for because I've picked worsted weight yarn for my pattern. So I'm going to make them about 5 stitches apart instead so that I can still fit the mouth in between the eyes. So once you have the eyes positioned where you like them, we can go ahead and take the little plastic backs that come with and snap them on the back of the eye, so on the stem that goes through the fabric. And there are the eyes attached. So we can go ahead and reinsert our crochet hook and then start in on round 25. Where we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. And then decrease. So to do a decrease, we're going to go through our next stitch and yarn under and draw up a loop. And then repeat that in the stitch right after. So go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then we'll yarn over and draw through all 3 loops on our hook, decreasing those 2 stitches into 1 stitch for this round. Then we're going to repeat that sequence of 5 single crochet, decrease, all the way around this round. Alright, that wraps up round 25. Round 26, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And then decrease. And then just like the last round, we'll repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 26. Round 27, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. Then follow that with a decrease. Just like the last 2 rounds, we're going to repeat that pattern of 3 decrease all the way around. Alright, that's round 27 done. Round 28, we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then follow that with a decrease. Just like the last couple of rows, we're going to repeat that pattern, 2 single crochet decrease all the way around. Alright, that's round 28 done. Round 29, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round. And then follow that with a decrease. And you know the drill, we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around. Alright, that's round 29 done. So round 30, which is the last round here, we're going to decrease in each stitch all the way around. So 6 decreases. Alright, there's my last decrease, so I'm ready to fasten off, and I'll do that by taking my stitch marker out and slip stitching in the stitch it was just in. So to do a slip stitch, I'll go through that stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then just draw that loop through the only loop left on my hook. Then we need to leave a long tail to sew with, so we'll cut 6 to 12 inches worth of our pink. Then we'll take that slip stitch that's still on our hook and we're going to pull until the tail we cut goes through the slip stitch as well. And then tighten that slip stitch down by pulling the tail that we've cut. Then we need to sew this last round closed. And the way we'll do that is we're going to take the tail that we just cut and thread it through the eye of our yarn needle. And then we'll take that needle and we're going to sew through the front loop of each of the 6 decreases. So this one here closest to the surface of our work. So I'll sew through that first one, rotate, sew through the next. We'll just keep sewing through these loops. So there are all 6 of those loops sewn through. I'm going to pull tight to close. And then we need to tie a surface knot. So I'm going to loop the yarn over the surface of my work, grab a little fabric of the work, and then sew up through that loop. And then by pulling, that loop I made is going to wrap around, which ties a knot. And then I'm going to weave this tail in. I'm just going to send it straight inside and out through just any old place here, which weaves it in. Now that I've got it woven in, I'm going to give it a trim and discard anything I didn't use. And then we're going to take our teacup and we're going to push all of that fabric that we made so that it's on the inside of the cup. It'll kind of fold over on those front loops left behind here on the pink. So I'm just going to kind of fold and roll to help give our teacup that shape. And then we're going to add a little extra detail here along these front loops that are left behind, starting with the green one. So we're going to flip our teacup over and then locate where that first jog is. So do you see how these stitches don't quite line up? One's a little further along than the other. We want to start in this loop left behind. So not the one closest to the magic ring, but the one closest to the top of the cup. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to push it through that front loop. Then I'm going to take my green yarn and fasten on here. So leave a little bit of a tail, wrap it around my hook, and then pull that wrap through. And then to make the bottom of the teacup have a little bit of a more defined shape, we're going to just slip stitch in each of these front loops all the way around. So I'll go through my next front loop, yarn over and draw through, and then draw through the other loop on my hook. And I'm just going to keep slip stitching in each of these front loops here left behind until I am all the way around. Alright, so I've slip stitched all the way around. I'm going to slip stitch in that first loop that I joined to. Then I'm ready to fasten off. So I'll cut a tail here on the green and pull that last slip stitch that I made all the way through and tighten down. And then we need to weave in both of our tails, the one from fastening on and the one from fastening off. I'm going to tie them together first. And then we can weave them in by threading them through the eye of our yarn needle and then just sending them into the inside of the cup and out through just any place, doesn't really matter where. I'll do that with both tails. And that weaves them both in, and then I can give them a trim. And you can see that adds a nice little ridge here to the bottom of our cup. Then we're going to repeat that same thing again with the top of the cup. So we're going to go and attach on to where our jog is closer to the bottom of our cup. And then join that same pink color that we used for the watermelon itself. Pull it through that loop that we have on our hook. And then we're going to just slip stitch in each of the front loops left behind at the top of the cup as well. Alright, so just like at the bottom of the cup, I'm going to slip stitch into that first loop that I drew through. And I'm ready to cut a tail. Then I'll pull that slip stitch through and tighten. And then just like with the bottom of the cup, I need to tie these two tails together and weave them both in. Alright, and that is the top of the cup detail added. Next, let's go ahead and add Lilibet's smile on. Alright, so I have a little bit of black embroidery thread here, and I'm going to thread the eye of my embroidery needle with the embroidery floss. And then we're going to embroider the mouth so that it is in between the eyes. You can also embroider it lower. The pattern calls for it to be in round 8. But I'm going to sew mine right between the eyes because I think that looks really cute. So I'm going to send my embroidery floss in through just one layer of the fabric of the green here. And in the stitches in between, in the space in between stitches. And then be careful not to sew through the back layer of fabric. We want to kind of sew in between the two. So I'm going to send my embroidery floss in the stitch right next to the left eye. And then when I pull, I want to leave a tail on the outside because we're going to tie the tail and the other end together and weave those in. So I'm going to sew a stitch here at a little bit of an angle, about one row down, and then repeat here on the other side. So I'll sew back up over closer to the right eye. And there's that angled stitch. I'll repeat on this side and come up through where I went down on my first stitch. Then I'll connect those two with a straight stitch so it's a nice big smile. And then come up through the same space between stitches that I sent my tail down through. You can see that gives our teacup a really happy smile. Then we can go ahead and unthread our embroidery needle. And we're going to tie these two tails together. So just like we did with the slip knot tails, we'll do a double square knot, just like you would on your shoelace. Then we're going to trim both of these tails short. And then to hide them inside of our work, we're going to just pull the fabric of our work up. And if you need to, you can take your needle and push those tails down into your work, which hides them inside of the teacup. Alright, so that is the teacup and the face added. The last thing we need to do is make the handle. So we're going to be using white yarn for our handle. So we need to start with this white yarn and by forming a slip knot and chaining. So let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to chain. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail, and then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. Sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it. And then with my other hand, I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me, that's my left index finger. And then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Okay, so now that we have our slip knot formed, we can start by chaining 16 stitches. Then we have all 16 stitches chained in the second chain from our hook, and we're not counting the loop on our hook. We'll go through that second chain and we're going to slip stitch. So yarn over and grab and then pull through the only other loop on our hook. And we'll continue slip stitching down this chain, adding 1 slip stitch to all 15 chain stitches. Alright, so I'm at the very end of my chain and I've slip stitched and everything. And I'm going to cut a long tail to sew with. And then I'm going to pull both that tail and the tail from my slip knot start through this last stitch on my hook. And then just pull until they both go through and then tighten them down. Alright, so to attach the handle onto the teacup, I'm going to thread my yarn needle with the short slipknot tail first. And the way the teacup handle is going to attach is it's going to go onto the side of the cup, and this top part's going to attach a couple of stitches, and then it'll flip over on itself and attach straight here at the bottom, sort of forming this half heart shape. So I'm going to take my handle here, and I'm going to take the slipknot start tail. I'm going to weave it in between the two layers of these fabric, and just weave it in. I'm not going to be sewing with it. I'm going to use it to help hold the handle in place and weave that tail in to start with. So now that I've done that, I'm going to thread the longer tail that I saved for sewing through the eye of my tapestry needle here. And I'm going to sew a few stitches on the very bottom. So I'm going to sew into the fabric of the teacup and then up through the center of the handle. Then I'll sew back down into the handle and then up through the fabric of the teacup one last time. And then grab the handle with that last stitch. You can see that attaches the handle here at the top. And I'm going to send the yarn back down through the handle and in between the two layers of the fabric of the teacup and up down towards the bottom of the cup to attach the bottom of the handle. Then I'll flip the handle and I'm going to sew just one stitch through the bottom here. And I'll sew that through a couple of times just to really reinforce the bottom of the handle. And you can see that attaches the handle in place on the side of our teacup. So we need to fasten off. So I'm going to do that by sewing so that I'm coming out of the fabric of the teacup itself. And then I'll tie a surface knot. And then I need to weave this tail in. So I'm going to send it down through the handle and in between the layers of our teacup's fabric, and then just out through any old place. Then I can unthread my yarn needle, and I can cut both of these tails, both the slipknot tail and the one that I just finished sewing with. And with the handle attached, that wraps up Lilibet's tutorial.